Right. And when it comes to Kinect, I'm excited about it. The thing that I really don't understand, and it's what a lot of gamers don't understand, is being forced to buy it. But that's not necessarily a detriment for me. I'll still get it, but I don't want to be forced to. But oh well. And then I want to see. I'm actually interested in playing the Kinect Avatar games. I don't know if they're gonna have those or not, because I've seen it how it worked when what's his name, Kudo Sonoda was first debuting the Kinect 1.0
Mm.
a couple years back, and everybody just thought he looked like a tool. But how weird and wonky the Kinect 1.0 was. I want to see if they are if it is actually better. I mean, you hear companies tout their successes all the time when they come up with technology like this, but when you actually get in your hands, it's never as good as they say. So I hope it's as good as Microsoft is making it out to be, and I want to be able to use it for games sometimes. I don't know. Matter of fact, I'm open to the fact of, or I'm open to playing Just Dance on my channel and having people look at me all weird and be like, "What is this dude doing?" I'm open to making a fool of myself. I want to be able to use the Kinect and have it track me and not have to worry about constantly getting into the right position, like with the Kinect 1.0.
Yeah. Even like with Skype, I was watching a demo recently, and with Skype, the camera actually can detect your skeletal structure, and from that, it will use the camera to, rather than moving it with motors, it will actually pan and zoom to follow you around.
Oh,
So
geez,
for
that looks good.
so when you're playing like Just Dance and that, you could quite easily shift to the side of it and not have to worry about placing yourself centrally, because it'll just
Oh,
pan and zoom
geez,
to follow you.
that's awesome.
But if I can just touch on the note about the whole being forced to, I appreciate why people sort of say, "Oh, I don't like being forced to." As a consumer, nobody likes to being forced to do anything. But
Yeah.
I think the issue lies in a principle, in the sense that with Kinect 1.0, because it was sold separately, people view it as a peripheral rather than part of the system. Whereas with Xbox One, the way I see it, Kinect is part of the system now. It's not a peripheral to be added on. It is part of the lifeblood of the console now.
Right, I get your point. I think most people, like we touched on earlier, they think the Xbox One is an inferior system, and we talked about that in one of our prior dual comms, where technically it doesn't clock in as fast as the PS4, yada yada, but the differences are minimal.
Yeah.
So to the untrained eye, it's pretty much the same system, and I could see how it being part of a system, a part the Connect sensor being a part of the system warrants it being in the cost of the system.
Mm.
But I don't know. People are just finicky about that stuff, and I don't know if that's a word over there, but I just used it.
Yeah, it
um,
is.
but yeah, and I don't know. I'm excited for Connect, but let's move on to games.
Oh,
All right,
ho, ho, ho.
what are you feeling?
Halo. It's a long way off, but
Halo.
I've always been a Halo person since that was the first one of the first games I got on my 360. It was one of the first games I played after I'd been on like PlayStation. It was the first game I ever played on an Xbox was Halo One. Um, it's just been with me the whole time, and that's what I'm most looking forward to. Nearer to the point though, because Halo is looking at a 2014 release, I'm predicting probably this time 2014. This tends to be the Halo launch window.
Yeah.
Titanfall is a really big one for me. They've
Yeah.
sort of blended the fast pacedness of Call of Duty, which, well, we can probably touch on shortly, but they've combined the sort of the fast paced multiplayer of Call of Duty with the feel of Halo, in the sense of the futuristicness, which obviously appeals to me. But then
Yeah.
they've mixed in a few other elements, sort of the wall jumping, and it's a very different sandbox compared to any kind of shooter we've actually seen before.
it, it's very ambitious of them, I think. And most people are going to compare it to Call of Duty, since most of those guys at that studio are Call of Duty or Infinity Ward guys, ex Infinity Ward guys. So I'm willing. I'm actually excited about it. I want to give it a chance, and it's definitely a game on my radar. When it comes to Halo, I agree. I've loved Halo since Halo One, and And Frank O'Connor did acknowledge that they made mistakes with Halo 4, right?
Yeah,
That's great because as long as they know they made mistakes, then I'm willing to give them a chance. I'm even if Halo is like in the future, like 2040, whatever, and they're on Halo 35, I'll still buy every Halo for the
oh,
campaign alone.
absolutely, absolutely.
For the campaign alone, I'll still buy Halo. But multiplayer is where most people are going to spend a majority of their time. So they need to figure out a gameplay mechanic that appeases everyone. And Halo 4 just sort of felt we talked about it before. This isn't necessarily a Halo commentary, but it just didn't feel like Halo to me. It made a good game somewhat, but it didn't feel like Halo.
Yeah.
And I got bored of it quick.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I personally think, and I'm making this quite a stark prediction. I think Halo 5 is probably going to be, or the Halo Xbox One or whatever they're going to call it. I think this is likely to be the strongest. I think
In the franchise, or
out of the future, out of sort of Halo 4 onwards, I think
oh,
it's going to be the strongest. It's quite a out there prediction, but I think it is because new system, fully developed team now. They're not developing game whilst creating their own team at the same time.
hmm
I think they're really going to push this one. I think this is where it's going to be. So it's ambitious for a prediction, but that's where I'm going.
indeed. And other games I'm personally excited about. You touched on it a little bit earlier. I'm a big zombie fan,
Oh,
I've been a Dead Rising fan since 2006, I believe the first one came out. And the thing that about the Dead Rising one is that it takes place in Colorado, which is my state. So I was loaded like, yeah, Colorado, awesome. And I was having fun with it. And Frank West is just awesome. And then Chuck Green, I have it. As soon as it came on demand, I downloaded it again, or Dead Rising 2, and it was free, so I downloaded it again, and I'm having fun with that sometimes. And I don't know, I'm just ready for it. Now the reviews for Dead Rising 3 are sort of, I believe GameSpot gave it a 7 and IGN gave it an 8.3.
hmm.
And one of the complaints about Dead Rising 3 is that they don't think that it's nothing you can't really accomplish on an Xbox 360. They think that you can accomplish maybe the visuals on a 360, but obviously something that sets it apart is the sheer amount of zombies you can have on screen at once. And that's going to be, the zombies don't just grab you periodically now. They'll swarm on you quickly, and I don't know. It just seems much more of a challenge than any other Dead Rising in the past. Now I can get what they're saying because visually, because the it does seem sort of like when you're at 30 frames per second and you see textures popping in. And I saw one video where one of the bosses mohawks, one of those dudes who rides the motorcycles, and he's a boss or a psycho in Dead Rising 3. His mohawk popped in and out of existence, so he was bald 1 second and then had a mohawk the next. So that's I don't know I don't know if Microsoft just rushed the Capcom Vancouver, I believe it is, that develops the game. But there's definitely some things they can improve upon visually, but I'm still excited. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I'm a fan of zombie media, whether it be TVs or movies that take a serious tone. And Dead Rising has always had a slight serious tone with a goofy tone as well. And you can still do the goofy in Dead Rising 3, but I personally appreciate the more serious tone horror aspect. That's me.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, Dead Rising has never really been a game about visuals. You look at Dead Rising 2, and granted, it was a few years ago now, but it's never been, in the grand scheme of things, a pretty game. It's been good, but it's never been top of the range. If you get me. I mean, I've never been a huge Dead Rising player. Purely, I just never got round to buying them. I mean, the first Dead Rising I played was when it came out on Games with Gold, but
hmm
I've been having fun with that. And like I've said earlier, Dead Rising 3 does look really good. I've always been a zombie person, specifically Resident Evil, but that's a much more slower pace, much more tense
Indeed.
game rather than the sort of the action blend that Dead Rising has. Not saying it's a bad thing at all, but yeah, I've always been a Resident Evil person, and I'm curious to see what they're gonna do, because I'm probably thinking a bit far ahead, but I want to see if next gen can make any effect on the Resident Evil brand, because they made Resident Evil 4, and that was probably the best Resident Evil we've had in the last decade or so.
And
If
especially since they want to go back to the horror aspects of Resident Evil, since the fans weren't happy with the last few iterations.
no, 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 not at all. Resident Evil 4 was fantastic. I couldn't praise that game enough. I tried. I think I have it on about 5 different platforms, but anyway.
Jeez.
Well, yeah, I had it on PS2, and then I might have got it on the Wii, and then the 360 and phone, and yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
then I got 5, and it was too sort of bright daylight, sunny. Everyone's outside. It's not really zombies, just angry villager people. Wasn't really that scary. It was just the setting didn't allow for it. Whereas in Resident Evil 4 you had castles and creepy villages and nighttime and stuff. This was all daylight in the deserts and that. And then they were like, okay, we realise what we've done with Resident Evil 5. Let's fix that with Resident Evil 6,
Right.
which turned out to be even less frightening. And it's the least played Resident Evil game I've ever had, and I just really hope they can do something with next gen, perhaps using the darkness, maybe with the new processing power. I don't know what they can do, but I want to see them make a turn over a new leaf with the next gen.
Indeed, indeed. All right. And what other games are you excited for?
Launch. I'm curious to see how some of the sort of the more digital titles are, but some,
Like a local cycle or
yes, Loco Cycle I've heard a bit about, but have they pushed that back, or is that still launch?
I think that's launch.
Oh, okay, I might look
Lem-
into that.
I'm googling it right now. Let's see. Um, come on, come on. Yes, it is launch. It
Oh,
is launch.
oh, I might look into that then.
Now, here's some of the criticisms I've heard about it, and this is just from the fans, that it looks like a PS2 game, but it's not a full studio release. It's supposed to be a small sort of Xbox Live Arcade game for the Xbox One. Give it a chance, and if you don't like it, then all right. But that's what I'm sort of saying when people criticize the Xbox One. It always comes to graphics, and if just play it. If you have
Yeah,
fun, have fun.
it's not like I don't know how I can describe it really. You don't necessarily play the game for the graphics. It's a game. It's not a visual art display.
Indeed.
As
Oh,
poor an analogy as that is. One thing I would like to touch on though, Call of
yeah.
Duty Ghosts.
Ooh.
That's been a bit of a it's been a hilly trip with them. There's been a lot of criticisms and praises all over the place with that game.
Of course, it's going to get praises because it's the same thing, and the Call of Duty fans are going to like it no matter what. But even some of them are starting to realize that it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So, me personally, when it comes to Call of Duty Ghost or any new Call of Duty, I would buy Call of Duty if it wasn't a yearly series, and then I wouldn't, if I wanted to keep up, I wouldn't have to keep on buying new ones every year. Um, I would play Call of Duty Ghosts if it was like if it dropped the price dropped to I don't know what it would be over there, but $20,
Yeah.
and there wasn't going to be a new one just a couple months down the line, and I can actually enjoy it. But by the time Call of Duty Ghosts is $20, there's already going to be a new one that's pretty much the same thing from Treyarch. And well, people seem to be more fans of Treyarch, but instead of Infinity Ward, but I don't know. Even on next gen, it doesn't look next gen. It doesn't feel next gen. They sort of I think they sort of built it for current gen systems and then up-resed it, or I don't know, but it feels the same. So maybe the first true next gen Call of Duty where they don't have to develop it for the 360 and PS3 as well. Maybe then we'll get something that's good and fresh.
Yeah.
But right now it just feels mundane to me.
Yeah, I mean, like they were. You've seen how much sort of media coverage they've been giving it and said, "Oh, this is next gen. We've completely innovated everything, and it's very new. It's going to break all the rules. Yada yada yada." But the fact that it sold less than Black Ops 2 kind of it felt anticlimactic. I was really really surprised by that, and even to the fact where they sort of put their heads out there and they said, "Oh, congratulations to Rockstar for their record-breaking GTA 5. We're looking forward to taking that record in November."
Yeah.
And yet, no. And the thing that seemed quite dirty with me though is the fact that they were like, "Okay, we're looking forward to taking your record of however many sales it was on launch day."
Right.
And to cover their own backs, they actually went, "Oh, we've sold 10 million units." No, you sold 10 million units to the retailers.
Mm-hmm.
GTA 5 broke the records with the number of sales to the customers.
Yeah, I found that kind of funny how they said they sold 10 million units, but they didn't say how many on like day one or something like that. And they didn't say that it was to the retailers. I heard something about that as well. So I don't know. It's Call of Duty does seem to be waning in popularity, and hopefully the fans can force a change in the series if they're going to just continue to make it yearly.
Yeah,
But here's the thing, since it is popular, and even though it didn't, I don't know if it actually did sell as much as GTA 5 or whatever, but even if it did, that's the reason why they keep on making it every year, because people keep buying the same thing every year. So if you're going to keep buying it, you better not complain that it's not changing, because you're the one who's forcing them to keep pumping this out and pumping this out.
yeah,
Um, they're going to keep pumping it out as long as you're buying it. So if you think it's the same thing, don't buy it. Period.
yeah. It's simple as that. I mean, it seems to be a lot of the AAA games, if you like, the kings are starting to die out, and it's really starting to shine through now. Which not necessarily die out, was like I said, start waning, and it's really starting to show through now which ones have the strength behind them. Call of Duty obviously has the mass, the numbers, the people like you say who keep buying and keep buying, keep buying because of the name. But if you look at things like Assassin's Creed, I thought when Assassin's Creed 3 came out, and I despised it for everything it was worth, and which it could die in the deepest, darkest pit of hell, um, Assassin's Creed 4 completely changed that. And I can easily see a nice long future throughout this entire generation, at least with Assassin's Creed. Call of Duty, as we've described, it's starting to wane, and if unless they can find something to bolster it, it's going to struggle through its generation. Battlefield with Battlefield 4, the current gen was slightly sort of
Small.
anticlimactic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as pretty as everyone had hoped it would be. It's still got all these bugs and the crashing and everything like that. But next
Indeed.
gen, it's said to be absolutely fantastic, and I'm really excited to get my hands on it on Friday. Um,
And I personally don't think you were playing the full game on current gen, because on multiplayer the maps were smaller to accommodate for the sheer, I guess, the sheer vastness of the engine and what it has to do.
yeah,
But so it was just really, the current gen is really on its last legs, obviously. But I believe you only had, what is it, three control points.
yeah,
And on next gen you have like seven.
yeah,
So the whole map is opened, and it obviously is going to look better. One thing DICE has always been able to do is when they're in the thick of their console, like, or in the thick of a console's sort of lifespan, or just on PC all the time, their games look great
yeah.
for the most part. Now, one thing with Battlefield is if you're a campaign guy, you're not going to get much of a campaign with Battlefield series. So you're gonna have to get it for multiplayer. But Battlefield has always had a solid multiplayer. It's actually gaining in popularity as opposed to Call of Duty.